From Park City, Utah, at the Sundance Film Festival, this is Democracy Now!
The president has argued that he has legal immunity as president of the United States. In response, of course, we argued that that issue has been decided in the case of Paula Jones versus President Clinton, wherein the United States Supreme Court said that no man is above the law, including the President of the United States, for unofficial acts.
That's pioneering women's rights attorney Gloria Allred, who represents one of the women who've accused President Trump of sexual assault. She spoke at the women's rally in Park City, Utah this week. Allred was at Sundance because she herself is now the subject of a new documentary called Seeing All Red. We'll speak with Gloria Allred, as well as another feminist icon, Jane Fonda.
We have an opportunity now to really make a difference because people are recognizing what's at stake. It's never been this clear. You know, oftentimes you have to go to another country to see what could happen, but this is actually, our democracy is being threatened, and I think people are awoke.
The documentary Jane Fonda in 5 Acts also premiered here at Sundance. Having just turned 80, we sit down with Jane Fonda to talk in depth about her life's work, particularly going to Hanoi to oppose the Vietnam War. We talk acting, activism, and aerobics. Plus, we'll hear from Oscar nominee Common.
The women took over. Let it continue. Now women get paid as much as men do. Dr. Angelo looking from heaven's window, telling young girls phenomenal woman is in you. Body is a temple. Men don't pray. Mother Earth's arms around you saying it's okay. Toilet seats down. That's a no-brainer. Monuments in Washington of Fannie Lou Hamer.
We speak with Common about voting rights, the late anti-police brutality activist Erica Garner, and President Trump. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Trump ordered the firing of Special Counsel Robert Mueller last June and only backed away from this demand after the top White House lawyer, Donald McGahn, said he'd rather resign than carry out Trump's order. That's according to an explosive New York Times investigation. It chronicles how President Trump tried to claim Special Counsel Robert Mueller had conflicts of interest that disqualified him from carrying out the ongoing investigation into whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to sway the 2016 election, and whether President Trump later tried to obstruct the probe by firing FBI Director James Comey. Trump tried to claim Mueller was disqualified because Mueller had once had a dispute over the fees at the Trump National Golf Club in Virginia because he'd once worked for a law firm that had also represented Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and because he'd interviewed for the job of FBI director to replace Comey. But while White House lawyer Donald McGahn was unswayed by Trump's arguments and he refused to instruct the Justice Department to fire Mueller, saying his firing could have a catastrophic impact on Trump's presidency and that he, that's McGahn, would rather quit. This morning in Davos, Switzerland, where Trump is at the World Economic Forum, he rejected the New York Times report.
Did you fire Robert Mueller? You want to fire Robert Mueller?
Fake news, folks. Fake news.
What's your message?
Typical New York Times fake stories.
Amidst the political chaos in the United States and the escalating threat of nuclear war between the U.S. and North Korea, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has advanced the doomsday clock 30 seconds closer to midnight.
It is with considerable concern that we set the time of the 2018 doomsday clock and offer a plea to rewind the doomsday clock. As of today, it is 2 minutes to midnight.
The clock is a symbolic timekeeper that tracks the likelihood of nuclear war and other existential threats. It now stands closer to midnight than at any time since 1953. The scientists directly cited President Trump's nuclear policies as one of the reasons for advancing the clock, Scientist Lawrence Krauss also said the loss of trust in facts themselves contributes to the growing existential threat.
The danger of nuclear conflagration is not the only reason the clock has been moved forward, as my colleagues have described. This danger looms at a time when there's been a loss of trust in political institutions, in the media, in science, and in facts themselves, all of which exacerbate the difficulty of dealing with the real problems the world faces, and which threaten to undermine the ability of governments to effectively deal with these problems.
In Washington, D.C., immigrant rights groups and some Democratic lawmakers are slamming President Trump's new proposed immigration plan, which would provide a 10 to 12-year path to citizenship for about 1.8 million young undocumented immigrants in exchange for no protections for their parents. $25 billion for Trump's border wall, an end to the family reunification program, and an end to the diversity lottery system, which particularly benefits African nations. Opponents of Trump's plan say it would dramatically restrict legal immigration paths and hurt families. The plan was crafted by Trump's xenophobic policy advisor, Stephen Miller, and White House Chief of Staff General John Kelly, who previously served as the head of Homeland Security and before that as the head of the Pentagon's Southern Command. In response to the plan, the American Civil Liberties Union tweeted, "Today, the White House released a hateful proposal that would slash legal immigration to levels not seen since the racial quotas of the 1920s, eliminate legal channels for African immigrants, and spend $25 billion for a wasteful border wall, plus increase in Border Patrol and ICE agents," unquote. Many immigration activists and Democrats have vowed to oppose the plan, with Illinois Democratic Congressmember Luis Gutierrez tweeting, "It would be far cheaper to erect a 50-foot concrete statue of a middle finger and point it towards Latin America. Both the wall and the statue would be equally offensive and equally ineffective, and both would express Trump's deeply held suspicion of Latinos," Gutierrez tweeted. In more immigration news, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund has sued the Trump administration over its decision to end temporary status protections for nearly 60,000 Haitian immigrants who've been living in the United States for years. The group's arguing the move was irrational and discriminatory and that it was motivated by President Trump's, quote, public hostility toward immigrants of color. President Trump is facing protests in Davos, Switzerland, where he's slated to address the World Economic Forum this morning. Swiss activists greeted Trump's arrival with a 200-foot-long banner hung on the side of a mountain reading, "Trump not welcome." This is activist Andreas Friemler.
Well, we just had 8 helicopters passing by with Donald Trump sitting in one of them, and we want to send a very clear message to him. We don't agree what you're doing. What you do is not good for the world. It's not good for the people.
In South Korea, at least 37 people have been killed in a fire at a hospital in the southeastern city of Myeong. At least 140 more people were injured. It comes on the heels of another deadly fire in South Korea, which killed 29 people last month. In news on Honduras, an explosive new investigation by the Associated Press says Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández's new national police chief personally helped facilitate a massive cocaine delivery to a drug cartel boss in 2013. The report says José David Aguilar Moran was serving as the chief of intelligence for the National Police when a police officer busted over officers escorting a tanker truck filled with more than 1,700 pounds of cocaine. Now, Police Chief Aguilar then reportedly personally ordered the corrupt officers to be freed and the drugs delivered. The U.S. street value of the cocaine shipment was over $20 million. The AP investigation is another blow to the government of President Juan Orlando Hernández, who is slated to be sworn in on Saturday after a highly contentious re-election that the American Organization of States says was riddled with fraud. Since the November 26 vote, nationwide protests and strikes have rocked Honduras, with more mass protests being organized for Inauguration Day. This is demonstrator Maria Esther Escalante.
Unfortunately, democracy has been lost in this country. We see every day how the dictatorship imposes itself in the country and therefore creates a situation that puts greater complexity and greater difficulty on the defense of human rights.
Puerto Rico says after the island was hit by the devastating Hurricane Maria, it will not pay any of its debt service payments for the next 5 years. That's according to Puerto Rico's new fiscal plan, which must be approved by Puerto Rico's unelected, congressionally imposed Fiscal Control Board. Meanwhile, Harvard students are demanding their university divest its $2 billion commitment with Baupost Group, a Boston-based hedge fund that is a large holder of Puerto Rico's debt. And the Supreme Court has stayed the execution of Vernon Madison after his lawyers argued he was mentally incompetent after being imprisoned in solitary confinement on death row for 30 years. Vernon Madison was sentenced to death for the killing of a police officer in 1985 in Alabama. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from the Sundance Film Festival here in Park City, Utah, which has been surging with energy from the Me Too and Time's Up movement all week. The week began with hundreds of thousands of women taking to the streets across the United States Saturday to mark the first anniversary of last year's historic Women's March, protesting President Trump's inauguration. Here in Park City, Utah, protesters braved freezing temperatures and a snowstorm to take part in the Respect rally. It was here at Sundance 2 decades ago that movie mogul Harvey Weinstein allegedly assaulted actress Rose McGowan. McGowan told the New York Times in October Weinstein offered her $1 million in a hush money payment if she signed a non-disclosure agreement to not come forward with the charges that he raped her in a hotel room during the 1997 Sundance Festival. Just last year, Weinstein was at Sundance and attended the Women's March here. Weinstein was in town promoting Jay-Z's docuseries Time, the Kalief Browder story about New York City teenager Kalief Browder, who committed suicide in 2015 after being sent to Rikers jail at age 16 and held for 3 years, much of that time in solitary confinement. Last year, I was able to speak to Jay-Z about Kalief, about Rikers, until Harvey Weinstein ended the interview.
Do you think Rikers should be closed?
Oh, man. Well, if anything like that is happening, if that happens to one kid, any place that can happen to any kid should be closed.
In your thoughts on Donald Trump and what it means for mass incarceration?
You know what? This is a labor of love for Jay, and as a result, he's my friend. We're here to talk about that and nothing else.
Well, then, can I ask about mass incarceration? And do you think the movement is okay?
That was last year, as Harvey Weinstein took Jay-Z away from our interview. Well, this year, one of the protesters at Saturday's Women's March here in Park City, Utah, was longtime women's rights attorney Gloria Allred. Allred is one of the most powerful advocates for survivors of sexual assault, and a survivor herself. She now represents one of the women who've accused President Trump of sexual assault. Her daughter, attorney Lisa Bloom, was an advisor to Weinstein and has apologized for that since. During Gloria Allred's speech on Saturday at the Respect rally, Allred called for passage of the Equal Rights Amendment.
We demand the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, that equality of rights shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Resist. Persist. Elect. And don't forget, insist. Insist. And let me tell you, Utah, we have 36 states who have ratified the Equal Rights Amendment, most recently Nevada. And now it is time for Utah. Resist. Insist. Persist. Elect. And give a hearing to the ERA in Utah. Yes, let's hear it. We need you to be the 37th state. We need 38th. Let me tell you, no one has ever given women their rights. The women who fought for the right to vote, suffrage, the 19th Amendment, had to fight for 72 years to win the right to vote, and we have been fighting for almost 95 years just to put women in the Constitution, to protect the rights of our daughters. And we are going to have it. We are going to fight to win it. We are going to make sure that from the White House to the Congress, to state capitals, to our workplaces, to our homes, that we are going to stand for protection in the Constitution for women and equal rights.
That's longtime women's rights attorney Gloria Allred speaking at the Women's March here in Park City, Utah, Saturday. She was at the Sundance Film Festival for the premiere of a documentary about her life and path-breaking legal career. The film is called Seeing Allred. This is a trailer.
I'm so proud of all of the women who have had the courage to speak out. Rich, famous, powerful men have to understand there are rules, there are boundaries. They must respect those boundaries. This has got to end, and it needs to end right now. There is a war on women. Women depend on me to be strong and to assert and protect their rights.
Joining us now, civil rights attorney. Please welcome Gloria Allred.
She talked about sexual harassment, race, women's rights, when nobody wanted to talk about it.
He thinks no more women will come forward. He is very wrong. Power only understands power. Fighting injustice is a commitment that I made many years ago.
She understands what we are experiencing based on what she had experienced herself.
What happened to me was absolutely shocking. To this day, I can't even think about it.
Is this getting too personal?
My commitment to women comes from my own life experience.
I have this venom toward Gloria Allred. Wherever you see Allred, you know somebody's lying.
That's assault. That is assault.
I think Gloria enjoys conflict. This makes her a great champion for us.
People say she's loud, she's got an ego. She must just love the camera.
She's trying to turn women into men.
I think secretly you envy women and you fear them.
I just say, haven't you met any men like that?
You should use these resources to arrest these fathers who are not paying their child support.
If it wouldn't have been for Gloria, Nicole would have always been just that person on the gurney.
We deserve to know if Mr. Cosby is a sexual predator.
This is not state law as we see it.
Hopefully next year you can issue the marriage license to help people evolve from being a victim
'Cause I'm on fire,
to becoming a survivor, to becoming a fighter for change. Women are now empowered, and they will never be silent again.
So that's the trailer for Seeing Allred, the documentary film on the legendary women's rights attorney Gloria Allred. It comes out on Netflix on February 9th. But the film did just premiere here at the Sundance Film Festival. After Gloria Allred walked off the stage in the midst of the snowstorm and freezing weather on Saturday, I got a chance to speak with her at Saturday's rally.
I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and I'm a women's rights attorney, and I have been for 42 years.
And you represent some of the women who have charged Trump with sexual assault. That's the president.
One woman, Summer Zervos, who is one of the women who spoke out in reference to then Mr. Trump during the campaign and made allegations that he engaged in sexually inappropriate conduct with her. He then called her and all of the women who spoke out liars and said it was fabrication and fiction, and he would sue them all after the election. He did not sue them. I called on him after the election to retract his threats to sue and his statement that they were all liars. He did not do that. So on behalf of Summer Zervos, we filed the defamation lawsuit in New York, and it is now pending before the court. He's made a motion to dismiss. We have filed our opposition. We have provided our oral argument in a hearing, and we are awaiting the court's decision as to whether we will be permitted to proceed with this defamation lawsuit.
Does the president have immunity?
The president has argued that he has legal immunity as president of the United States. In response, of course, we argued that that issue has been decided in the case of Paula Jones versus President Clinton. wherein the United States Supreme Court said that no man is above the law, including the President of the United States, for unofficial acts. We argue that if we can prove defamation and that he said what he said prior to becoming President of the United States, that's an unofficial act, and that he should not enjoy legal immunity. One of his other arguments was that he's president 24/7, essentially is too busy to be defending lawsuits. Our response to that is we will be very respectful of the president's schedule, and in the event that we are permitted to take his deposition, his testimony under oath, we'll even be willing to do it at Mar-a-Lago between rounds of golf.
Why is it so important to take on the President of the United States at this point? And your thoughts on the fact that 16 women came forward and charged Donald Trump with various acts of sexual misbehavior, sexual assault, and harassment, and he became president after that?
The reason that we filed this lawsuit is because truth matters. And that's why we are pursuing this lawsuit. I am very proud of all of the women who came forward in the last year and a half against rich, powerful, famous men and made the allegations of the injustice that they felt that they had suffered in their lives. Truth matters to them, too. And women are going to continue to speak out.
Will other women be coming forward, do you know of, against President Trump?
I have no comment on that.
And what did some reservists charge that Donald Trump did to her?
We're not going to be going into that. We have made all of our allegations in the complaint in our lawsuit that is on file. But I'm proud of all of the courage of all of the women.
So all the women came forward. Donald Trump became president. But at the same time, the Me Too movement just burst on the scene. And now the 16 women who've come out speaking, charging President Trump with various allegations of assault and harassment and misconduct are at it again. They're going around for a second shot to say, take us seriously. They want a congressional investigation.
Well, some are speaking out, some are not speaking out. But they spoke what they said was the truth about their lives. And I think that's what's important. We have heard them. We will continue to hear them. And not only against and about President Trump, but about other powerful men who have hurt them in their lives, who've crossed boundaries, who have shown a lack of respect, who have not been engaged in affording them their rights, but instead in denying them their rights. So women will never be silent again. They are empowered in a way that they've never been before, and we're going to win change. We have already won some changes because women have not allowed that fear to be used as a weapon to silence them, and we're going to win even more in the years ahead.
Gloria Allred, you're here at the Sundance Film Festival where there is a film premiering about you.
Yes.
Allred.
There it is, Seeing All Red.
Seeing All Red.
Yes, I'm just honored that this documentary, which has been in the works for 3 years, covering many of my battles for justice for women, and is going to be launched this weekend, and then on February 9th on Netflix. And it's in the documentary competition. So we were honored to be selected out of 2,000 entries, I understand. 16 were placed in the competition. Ours is one of them. I just hope that it helps to inspire women when they see these other women in the film, some of them my clients, some of them not my clients, saying, we demand change.
What has motivated you personally, your own life experiences that led you to represent so many women taking on powerful men?
Because I realize how much is at stake. I know my own life experiences, and I have suffered in many ways that other women have. And all I can say is, what I want is for women to move from becoming just victims to becoming survivors, to becoming fighters for change. This is a transformative moment, and they are becoming fighters for change.
Did you ever expect to see this moment?
It is a process, and we have been working in this process for 42 years, but this is a very major moment, and there's a ripple effect. The wave has been coming in for a long time now. It's a tsunami. and women will never be silenced again.
That's legendary women's rights attorney Gloria Allred. Coming up, Jane Fonda. Stay with us.
I'm totally wired. I'm totally wired. I'm totally wired. Totally wired. Can't you see? A butterfly stomach ground. I drank a jar of coffee, and then I took some of these, and I'm totally wired. Totally wired. I'm totally wired.
Totally Wired by The Fall. The Fall's lead songwriter and singer Mark E. Smith died on Wednesday at the age of 60. Billy Bragg wrote on Twitter, "First we lost Ursula Le Guin, then Hugh Masekela, now Mark E. Smith. Been a tough week for cultural icons." This is Democracy Now!, DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from Park City, Utah, from the Sundance Film Festival, as we turn to the subject of a new documentary premiering here at Sundance about another icon, maybe one of the most iconic and controversial actors in Hollywood. She's a girl next door, political activist, fitness tycoon, feminist, Academy Award-winning actress. I'm talking about Jane Fonda. Filmmaker Susan Lacey examines Fonda's remarkable life in the documentary Jane Fonda in 5 Acts. Fonda's acting career spans 6 decades and includes performances in such critically acclaimed films as Klute, Barefoot in the Park, Coming Home, and the current television series Grace and Frankie. But as actresses in Hollywood are being recognized for speaking out in the Time's Up movement, Jane Fonda has consistently challenged power, from opposing the war in Vietnam to organizing around civil rights and economic justice. In one of her more controversial moves, Jane Fonda traveled to Hanoi in 1972 and appeared on several radio programs to speak out against U.S. military policy in Vietnam and beg American pilots to stop bombing civilian targets. During the trip, a photograph was taken of Jane Fonda seated on an anti-aircraft gun in Hanoi. The photo earned her the nickname Hanoi Jane, which was resurrected just this week by NBC morning show host Megyn Kelly, formerly of Fox News.
After all, this is a woman whose name is synonymous with outrage. Look at her treatment of our military during the Vietnam War. Many of our veterans still call her Hanoi Jane. Thanks to her radio broadcast, which attempted to shame American troops, she posed on an anti-aircraft gun used to shoot down our American pilots. She called our POWs hypocrites and liars and referred to their torture as understandable.
Jane Fonda has repeatedly apologized for the photograph. In her 2005 memoir, My Life So Far, Fonda says she remembers immediately regretting taking the photo. She writes, quote, "Oh, my God, it's going to look like I was trying to shoot down U.S. planes. It was my mistake, and I have paid and continue to pay a heavy price for it." Well, Jane Fonda also continues to speak out. I caught up with her after Saturday's Respect rally here in Park City, after the premiere of the documentary about her life. In December, she celebrated her 80th birthday. Jane Fonda, it's wonderful to be able to speak to you on Democracy Now!
Can't tell you how happy I am that we ran into each other and that I'm here with you.
Did you ever think this year would happen? The Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, President Trump being elected. Your thoughts?
Trump is a major negative energy, and when he moves out in the world, it releases positive energy from other people. So in a way, there's something really good about it, because people are being enlivened, emboldened, activated that never were before. We have an opportunity now to really, really make a difference, because people are recognizing what's at stake. It's never been this clear. You know, oftentimes you have to go to another country to see what could happen, but this is actually, our democracy is being threatened, and I think people are awoke.
And what about these movements that so much involve people in your world, from Time's Up, we're talking Hollywood and women saying they've had it, right down to domestic workers, to every walk of life, saying sexual abuse, sexual harassment, sexual misconduct is not acceptable?
I think I didn't expect it, and I'm really deeply moved by it. You know, as I have said before, it was the fact that famous white women spoke out and were believed. Black women have been speaking out long before. The most noted, of course, is Anita Hill. But I have been in the meetings, and the women that make up the Time's Up movement are really, they're young, they're smart, they understand intersectionality. And this isn't going to go away. This is happening. It's a tipping point. It really is. We're living through a historic moment now.
How important is Hollywood in shaping views, the place where you have lived so much of your life?
Frankly, I don't think so much. I don't think Hollywood frames the news so much. I think, unfortunately, corporations more and more are framing the news. You know, I'm working with Restaurant Opportunities United in Michigan a lot on the ground, and what scares me as I travel through Michigan is the degree to which average people are not getting news. The television stations, the radio stations are being bought up by Sinclair and others, and it's really scary. And, you know, I think that corporations are determining what people hear. There are some exceptions, obviously. You know, MSNBC at night, and others, but that's why it's so important that people are on the ground talking to people door to door, you know, working within real organizations that have experience of doing this kind of door-to-door work. Because what have we learned? We've learned you can't say anything bad about Trump. You can't. You have to tell them something they don't already know. For example, we were canvassing in San Diego. A woman who had just lost her job. She had 4 children, one with a serious precondition, a mother. She was supporting them all. She was really scared. 100% Trump supporter. Why? Because he understands me. He's my people, and he's authentic. And so the canvasser, who happens to be an actress, who plays my daughter my eldest daughter in Gracie and Frankie, said to her, well, do you know that if Trump's health care package passes, your son will lose his precondition insurance coverage? And the woman stopped breathing, and she didn't know that. And she flipped right there. And, you know, that to me is a dramatic example of how important it is that we find a way to keep real news reaching people. And it can't come from Hollywood or the Democratic Party, for that matter.
Now, you've gone back and forth, an actress, an activist, and you seem to traverse these worlds quite comfortably. You went to Standing Rock, to the standoff at Standing Rock. Why was that so important to you, the battle against the Dakota Access Pipeline?
Well, I'm worried about the planet. I'm worried about, you know, all the scientists who really know say we cannot take any more oil or gas out of the ground. We have enough. We can do without. We can make the transition to renewables without drilling anymore. So, I knew it wasn't necessary. I knew that it didn't even make economic sense because the price of oil had dropped so much. But also, in 1970, I went to Alcatraz when indigenous people from the Bay Area occupied Alcatraz. So I was there. That was like the beginning of the American Indian movement. All these young people who had never, they didn't know their elders. They didn't know that Thomas Banyakas, the great Hopi shaman. They didn't know about the traditions and the ceremonies. And Wilma Mankiller, who was the chief of the great Cherokee Nation, that was where she first connected with the elders. And then fast forward to Standing Rock and seeing the degree to which the traditional rituals and ceremonies have taken hold and have really saved lives meant so much to me. It was very, very moving to me to see that. And then also moving to me because with all that us white Europeans have done to indigenous people. And just, there's no end to the horrors and atrocities we've visited upon them, and yet they're still there trying to tell us how we have to do things differently. They're still hoping that they can have some influence to show us the way to go. They've never given up on us. It's so moving to me.
We're here at the Sundance Film Festival, and we just came from a premiere of the documentary about your life, Jane Fonda in 5 Acts. And it talks about your early years as Barbarella and Hollywood, and then that shift to activism. You just plunged into it in your battle against the Vietnam War, supporting of Black Panthers. Talk about the transition you made.
I was fortunate to be at that time in my life at a crossroads in history when everything was changing. I mean, I was in France when a combination of worker and student uprisings almost toppled the de Gaulle government. And my daughter was born a few months after that. There were things happening all over the world. Plus, from France, I could look at television and see this robust movement in the United States standing up to the Pentagon and to the administrations. And I'm my father's daughter, you know. I'm the daughter of Tom Joad and 12 Angry Men and all those Abe Lincoln, those characters that he played. And I thought, what am I doing? I should be there. And with the encouragement of Simone Signoret, I left and I went there.
And what did Henry Fonda, what did your father think about you?
Well, you know, Dad, I love him so. He had lived through the McCarthy era. He had seen careers destroyed. He was really scared for me. He didn't entirely understand. I would bring, like Green Berets and grunts, soldiers, to talk to him about what their experience was in Vietnam. But he couldn't go where I was. It was a generational thing, and he just didn't understand. And he was scared when I started to investigate the Black Panthers, and I went to visit Angela Davis when she was in jail, and it scared him to death because he thought that I was going to fall victim to the same kind of witch hunting. But it wasn't the same. It was maybe gray listing, but it wasn't blacklisting. But whatever he said to me, which was pretty hard for me to take, came out of his love and fear for me.
You were very active in the anti-war movement with your then-husband, Tom Hayden, well-known anti-war activist, with whom you had your son. We lost Tom, the whole country recently, Tom Hayden. The significance of your activism there, and then in the film, something I had not realized. I certainly knew about the Jane Fonda workout tapes, and I knew about your activism, but did not understand that these Jane Fonda workout tapes that you did actually funded the California Campaign?
California Campaign for Economic Democracy. Here's how it went. See, this was a statewide organization that made a huge difference in California. We elected people that are still serving in public office in California. And so we had to raise a lot of money because we had a lot of chapters, and there was a recession. And I read an article that Lyndon LaRouche, that really bad but very wealthy guy, had a computer business that would fund people that would hold those signs at the airports and go into gay bars, and his people would beat gay people with chains and stuff like that. And I read an article that said that he supported all that with his computer business. And so I thought, okay, what business can I go into that could make money? And it was the workout.
And so what happened?
So I funded the Campaign for Economic Democracy.
And come up, get on your hands and knees, weight evenly distributed on your hands. These are called Rover's Revenge.
We made a lot of money over the workout, and then eventually I bought the business back.
The book and the videos.
Yeah.
Talk about how much money we're talking about here. You blew everyone away. How long were you on the New York Times bestseller list for?
2 years. 2 solid years. That is what caused the New York Times to start separating it out into categories. Because to have the workout book competing with, Philip Roth or somebody didn't make any sense. And it must have been hard for Tom, that was a difficult period for our marriage and for him.
Because?
I was an activist when he met me. We were together, arm in arm, on the road, doing this incredible Indochina peace campaign thing. And we really did help, although it's not in the Ken Burns documentary, but we did help end the war. And then the war ended, and I started the workout business because we were starting this political organization. And the workout business kind of drove a wedge between us, and it was difficult. And also, I started to become more successful as an actor. So it took me away from him.
You talked about your anti-war activism, the trip you made to North Vietnam. You did something that you don't see a lot of politicians doing today. And you've said you felt sorry for one part of what you did back then. Can you explain the trip you took to North Vietnam?
Yes. I went to North Vietnam explicitly to stop the bombing of the dikes, which we had been told by European diplomats that were in the North was happening. We weren't, of course, getting it in the news, and I knew that that was catastrophic because, you know, the North Vietnam, like Holland, is below sea level, and the dikes are made by the peasants by hand. They're earth. And if they're destroyed before the monsoon season, there was a great likelihood that people were going to drown and starve. And it had been proposed to Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, and he said, no, we can't do that. That's what Hitler did when he bombed Holland. We can't be responsible. But Nixon said, yes, let's do it. And so I wanted to go and expose that. And I remember, you know, they gave me the North Vietnamese gave me a preliminary agenda. And on the agenda was visiting an anti-aircraft gun. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to visit that.
Because?
I didn't think it was appropriate. I was there by myself for 2 weeks. And the things that happened to me there, I mean, we couldn't put it all in the movie, but I mean, I don't know if we have time, but let me just tell you one story, or two stories. I was driving back with my translator in a car from a city that we'd visited. It was an industrial city in North Vietnam that had been destroyed. And on the way back, the driver could hear that there were planes coming. I couldn't hear yet, but they said, get out and run. And there are these manholes along the side of the road with kind of straw things that you put over. And a young girl, grabbed my arm, and she had school books with her, and she pulled me into a hole. I mean, I went in, she pushed me in, and then she jumped in. These are made for one person, and we were like smushed up against each other. She pulled the top over, and the ground started shaking as the bombs fell. I kept thinking, this is not true. This is a dream. This isn't really happening. And when it was over and the bombing stopped, and she took the lid off, and I started to cry, and I said to my translator, I said, tell her, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that we're doing this to your country. You know, she was maybe 15, and she said to me, at least I think she said to me, this came through a translator, don't be sorry. We know why we're fighting. I can't remember her exact words, but it was something like, your soldiers and pilots, they don't know why they are doing this. It's your tragedy in a way, something like that. And it couldn't have been planned. It was just out in the middle of the country. So that really brought me up short. This 15-year-old girl who's saying, no, we know we may lose people and soldiers, but we know why we're fighting. The tragedy is yours because you don't even know why you're fighting. So that's one story that just made me real. The other is on the day before my last day, the last day being the one where I sat on that anti-aircraft gun, I was asked to look at a production of Arthur Miller's play, All My Sons, performed on a platform outside in Vietnamese. And it's a story about a factory owner who makes parts for bombers. And he has two sons. One of the sons is a pilot, and his son crashes. And the younger son knows that the reason the father has known that his factory was making faulty parts for bombers, and he didn't speak up because he didn't want to lose his government contract, and he's condemned by his younger son. So, okay, I see this play. I'm sitting next to the director. I said, There's a war going on. Why are you taking this? It was being toured through villages that had just been bombed.
Of North Vietnam.
North Vietnam villages that were being bombed, and they're taking this play by Arthur Miller. I said, why? And he said, we are a tiny country. One day we will have to be friends with you. Our people have to understand that there are bad Americans and there are good Americans. And I was a changed person. The whole idea of friend, enemy, strength, weakness was turned on its head. And the next day they said, we're going to take you out to the ceremony. And I went, and there were these soldiers standing, and they sang a song with the words that Ho Chi Minh had written when he made his address in the square in Hanoi. And his speech began, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. This was in the words that they sang. Because he'd been a cook in Harlem, and so he knew about our Declaration of Independence. And these soldiers sang. And then they asked me to sing, and we were laughing and clapping. And I sat down on that gun. And I don't know, I was just out of my mind, basically. I was out of my mind. I didn't think, it wasn't active, there were no planes or anything like that. I didn't even think what I was doing. And the minute I sat down, cameras went off, and I hadn't realized there was anybody with cameras. And as I was walking away, I realized, oh my God, these pictures are gonna make it look like I'm against my country and my soldiers. And I said, please, destroy those pictures. But of course.
And so you would come back to this country, and you faced a firestorm.
Yeah, but see, here's what's interesting. It wasn't that much of a firestorm in the beginning. There was only like an inch of press in the New York Times. And a few months later, we launched our Indochina Peace Campaign at the Ohio State Fair. No big deal. Nixon was very unhappy, and they did an investigation, and a guy from the State Department said she never committed treason. All she did was ask the soldiers to think. It wasn't until Reagan that they realized how important it would be to use my huge mistake to make me a Hanoi Jane, a traitor, to hurt the peace movement. And that's what hurts me so much, is that it was bad for the peace movement, and it hurt the soldiers. So it was a big mistake. Anyway.
Interestingly, today, with the longest war in U.S. history, Afghanistan and Iraq, a number of soldiers who come back from all of these places are condemning these wars and asking what the U.S. is doing. You don't usually hear those soldiers in the media.
Yeah. Well, just like you didn't hear those soldiers back in the day, or the POWs who spoke out and said, no, we were not tortured. The Vietnamese ruled out torture in 1970, but you never heard from them. Nixon never allowed them to have a platform.
You just turned 80. What gives you hope today?
If I can change, anybody can change. I know, and now we see it all around us, the extent to which people can say, oh my God, our way of life, our value system is being turned on its head. We have to stand up and fight. And that gives me tremendous hope. I think it can make a big difference. Sometimes you have to hit bottom. I have a lot of experience with alcoholism. You have to hit bottom before you can start to heal. We've hit bottom, man. We're gonna come up from this.
In the film, Jane Fonda, in 5 acts, the last act is what you're talking about right now, and living your life, and particularly your life with your women friends. Mm-hmm. Talk about the importance of women.
Harvard did a medical study that showed that if you don't have women friends, it's as dangerous for your health as smoking. And I totally believe it. Women friends are different than men friends. I've studied it. There have been studies done. Women go deep, eye to eye, face to face. We drill down. Men tend not to. And it's sad because it makes them more vulnerable in the long run. Friendships between women are lifesavers. I mean, you know, whether Pat Mitchell, Eve Ensler, all my, Paula, all my women friends make me strong and keep me going and inspire me so much. And so do you who got arrested at Standing Rock. I never did. You're so brave.
Well, that wasn't the intention. All we were doing was filming and saw these guards unleash dogs on the Standing Rock Zoo.
But it meant a lot to all of us that you were there.
So, Jane, what are you going on to do now?
Well, I'm doing a lot of things, but one of the things that I'm doing is when I've spent time in the Central Valley of California or in all different parts of Michigan, and I see how little by little local TV and radio stations are being bought up by the alt-right, by the Tea Party, and that really scares me. You know, people aren't getting the information they need, and so that's something that we have to fight and protect. We need a robust pipeline of real news, and then we have to get content in there. You know, all through the South, there's, you know, many, many hundreds, if not thousands, of black-owned TV stations and radio stations that operate on a dime and that, you know, need support and bolstering and reinforcing and need content. And so that has to happen. And then also, I've worked with restaurant workers. And one of the things that I've learned that really points to the importance of what Time's Up is doing, restaurant workers on the federal government says they can earn $2.13 an hour plus tips. Well, you can't live on that. And even in states where that low wage has been lifted a little bit, they're totally dependent on tips, so they have to not only tolerate but even encourage sexual abuse, because guys tip more that way. And these are often single women who are supporting families. There are 7 states that don't have the 2-tiered system, where waitresses earn the same minimum wage that other workers do, and in those 7 states, sexual harassment dropped by 50%, which to me is this concrete example of why economic parity and decision-making parity is critical if we want to do away with violence against women. So I'm working with ROC, Restaurant Opportunity Centers United.
Well, I want to thank you so much,
Thanks.
Jane. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And looking forward to, despite the fact you said this is your last act, I'm looking forward to the next act.
Okay. I'm looking forward to your next act, too. Thanks, Amy.
That's Jane Fonda, political activist, feminist, 2-time Academy Award-winning actress. The new film about her is called Jane Fonda in 5 Acts. This is Democracy Now!, back with Common.
Good food and the mood in the hood is free. Peace and free is the frequency. This is the day women took over. No longer over your shoulder do we have to look over. Imagine, war is now over. Mothers get medals for being courageous soldiers on dollars. It's Michelle, Obama, Oprah, and Rosa. The mayor, the shot is Liz Dozier. Hoods feel safer, families feel closer.
The day women took over by Common. This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. We're broadcasting from Park City, Utah at the Sundance Film Festival, and that's who we're ending with, Common. Yes, the Oscar-winning musician and actor nominated again for an Oscar on Tuesday, this time for his song Stand Up for Something from the film Marshall about Thurgood Marshall. Common's also starring in The Tale, which premiered here at Sundance, a film about child sexual abuse. Well, on Saturday, Common performed at the Respect Rally here in Park City, shared some verses from one of his songs.
The day the women took over, let it continue. Now women get paid as much as men do. Dr. Angelo looking from heaven's window, telling young girls phenomenal woman is in you. Body is a temple, men don't pray. Mother Earth's arms around you saying it's okay. Toilet seats down, that's a no-brainer. Monuments in Washington of Fannie Lou Hamer.
After Common addressed the crowd in the snowstorm at the Respect Rally in Park City, I caught up with him next to the stage and asked him about his thoughts on President Trump.
I try not to pay attention to a lot of ignorance comments and ignorant things. I mean, it just fueled me more to know that we got to keep spreading that love and empowering each other. I mean, of course, you know, Africa is the home of creation, you know, like where first people were found, and Haiti is a beautiful country. And so for anybody to generalize or for Trump to talk about Africa and Haiti in that way, it's just, you know, I don't want to play into I don't get into those games. I'm focusing on like really what can we do to better each other? How can we better empower each other and change the system and go out and vote and go out and do things that for on the ground level that changes our community and changes the way the world is in a better place. So that's what I thought really. It just gave me more fuel. You know?
Tom, and I saw you up in Harlem at Erica Garner's funeral. Yeah. Erica Garner, who fought so hard for her father, Eric Garner, who died gasping, "I can't breathe." Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you know, obviously first of all, I have thoughts and condolences for her family, and that's why I really wanted to show her, because I had been at a march and a rally for her father, and I saw how passionate she is and was about standing up for justice and justice for all people, but for black and brown people. We know that, you know, it's just an imbalance. So seeing what she did, I just wanted to be there to support her family. My thoughts is it's a painful situation that she lost her father for no reason, and then out of whatever things that she had to deal with, her life is gone. But I believe that we got to fight for them, and we got to go out and do things for them. We keep their energy and spirits alive by going out and doing the work. So
she fought so hard against police brutality. Your thoughts on black athletes taking the knee against police brutality? Well,
I think any form of peaceful protest and speaking out against injustices is necessary, is valued, and I applaud it, and it's peaceful, you know. So I think I love the athletes are taking their stance, and I really salute Colin Kaepernick, because he's a leader of the movement in many ways. Not in many ways he is, and he sacrificed so much, and because of it does not have a job right now, but that's the type of sacrifice he made, and he knew what he was talking about and stood on what he believed in. And I think those athletes are showing that it's not just only about sports, so it's not just about me rapping or being in a film. It's about what can we do to help other people who are in tougher situations, or even we are in tough situations. So how can we help each other?
Trump and Sessions ramping up now the so-called war on drugs.
I mean, it's another attack on black and brown people. We know that the war on drugs was throughout history is imprisoned more, you know, black and brown people than I don't know what thing in world history, but it's a bad situation, and it's targeted. Why not put more money into building schools and building up educational programs so we can stay on a global level excellent, you know?
President Trump has shut down the government rather than allow dreamers to stay in this country. Close to 800,000 young people.
My thing is, like, when you're in power and you're a leader, what is the purpose of taking away somebody else's dream or stomping on the people who don't have, like the people who are either in difficult economic situations or are looking for to be able to follow a dream and pursue something, you know, in their lives that means something. What is the core intention behind that? Why would you want to stop individuals from just pursuing their dreams? Like, I don't see how that helps humanity or helps our country. So, you know, those ideals are things that I don't subscribe to or believe in, and I'm glad to be here at this Respect rally. And more than anything, I'm standing with our women, for our people. I stand for black and brown justice, and I stand for God.
That's Oscar-winning actor and now nominated once again for an Oscar, musician and actor Common. Does it for our show. I'll be speaking here at the Sundance Film Festival at 1 p.m. The free event is at the Park City Museum, 528 Main Street, next to Dolly's. Special thanks to our crew here: Mike Burke, John Hamilton, Dennis Moynihan, Trina Nadura, Nicole Salazar, Nermeen Sheikh, Carla Wills, Aaron Dooley, and to Park City TV, Brendan O'Leary, Robbie Johnson, Shannon Runyon, Diego Romo, Euribia Barrios, Jacqueline Daly, Danielle Turner, Stanton Jones. DemocracyNow also produced by Renee Feltz, Dina Guzder, Laura Gottesdiener, Sam Alkoff, Robbie Karen, Honey Massoud, Andre Lewis, Nat Needham. Special thanks to Julie Crosby. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.